In Irish mythology, we come across a number of stories about shape-shifting beings. These shapeshifters are often gods, goddesses, magicians, witches, fairies, and other supernatural creatures. In ancient times, they believed it was possible to transform humans into animals by using magic. One of the most intriguing personalities in Irish mythology is Fintan mac Brocra, who is said to be the first man in Ireland. His story includes his relationship to the granddaughter of the biblical Noah, the story how he escaped the Great Flood and travelled to the Land of Destiny, meaning Ireland. According to the Book of Invasions, also called the Book of Conquest, Fintan mac Brocra, also known as the Wise, was a seer who was married to Lady Caesar. When Caesar was a young girl, only 10 years, an Egyptian priest warned her of a coming catastrophe. He told her to gather a group of women and try to escape. Caesar built 3 arks and filled them with women who all possessed different skills. Her father came along with 2 other men. In the poem, Fintan describes how he survived the flood when all others perished by hiding in the hill in Town Finney over the River Shannon. They sailed for 7 years before they reached Ireland. It was the year 2361 BC, according to the annals of the 4 masters, but only 1 ship had survived the epic journey. Among the survivors was Fintan mac Brocra. Upon arrival to Ireland, the women were divided into 3 groups. Each of the groups took one of the men to populate the new country. They also divided up the sheep they had brought with them. That's the story of how the first sheep reached Ireland. Lady Caesar was together with Fintan mac Brocra, and in time she became a great warrior. As I've mentioned before, shapeshifters are mentioned in many ancient Irish myths and legends, and the story of Fintan mac Brocra is no exception. As in many Irish myths and legends, Fintan is credited with shape-shifting abilities. According to the ancient tales, he could transform himself into a one-eyed salmon, an eagle, and a hawk. It was said he lived for 5,000 years before he left the realm of humans. The story of the flood can be found among all ancient cultures. His great age made him a very wise man. He saw historical events of old Ireland, and he used his knowledge to advise the kings of Ireland. It was not until the advent of St. Patrick and Christianity in Ireland that Fintan departed this mortal realm. In the Celtic lore, the Fomorians are described as terrifying giant creatures, horribly deformed and often mistaken for demons. It is said that this race is descended from Noah's son Ham. The Fomorians were superstitious and tyrannical. People conquered by them were either enslaved or was forced to pay a crippling tribute of 2/3 of all children and cattle born. They were said to have come from the sea or under its surface, and they were some of the earliest inhabitants of the British Isles, both Scotland and Ireland. Their terrifying armies would raid from the sea. The king of the Fomorians was Balor, a giant with an eye in the middle of his forehead, and according to the tradition, they conquered the first invaders of Ireland. 30 years later came the Nemeds, who, like those who settled Ireland before him, had genealogy going back to the biblical Noah. Nemeds managed to win 4 battles with the Fomorians, but after 9 years, Nemed and thousands of his people died of a plague. The Fomorians were again victorious until the Furbolgs, the 3rd group of invaders, arrived and subdued the Fomorians. The Furbolgs, the men of bags or sacks, a name given to them during their Greek exile. The Furbolgs managed to live peacefully with the Fomorians, who decided to give them Ireland, but their hostility against the Tuatha De Danann remained forever. The Tuatha De Danann defeated the Irish giants and forged a ceasefire with the Fomorians. This attempt failed due to the treachery from one side. That resulted in a terrible war between the 2 races that ended in the Fomorians' downfall. The Orkney Islands are situated in the North Sea. Once settled by the Norse, they left a unique and fascinating folklore and tradition that has much in common with Scandinavia. Among them are tales from fishermen of mythical creatures emerging from the waters during sea voyages. There are stories about a mythological race of dark sorcerers known as the Finn folk. Unique to Orkney and Shetland, these strong and athletic amphibious sea people have always been feared by mortals. They were shapeshifters with unequal boating skills. The Finn folk could step out of the water onto land as they choose, and live easily between the two worlds. Benevolent and threatening, they could punish seamen with terrible storms. On some occasions, they stole humans and brought them to their hidden island homes, where the abducted individuals were forced to remain for the rest of their lives. Except for their daughters, who were mermaids, the Finn folk were fully humanoids, but their bodies were draped with fish-like fins. They had a majestic city of unknown location, but it is usually said to be at the bottom of the sea. To the ancient Celts, nature and animals were sacred and must be treated with respect. The spiritual world was invisible, but there were gateways leading from the material into the spiritual world. The physical world was believed to be much more complex than we can even imagine. The Celtic Tree of Life served as a portal to invisible worlds and was a source to sacred knowledge, guarded by the most enlightened ones. The Celts had a special relationship to nature and believed that animals, plants and trees possessed a spiritual essence. Under certain circumstances, it was possible for humans to establish contact from other invisible realms. The belief in a tree of life is universal, and though the myths vary from culture to culture, some elements always remain almost identical. The Celtic Tree of Life is often depicted showing the branches reaching skyward and roots spreading out into the earth below, symbolising the Druid belief in a link between heaven and earth. People will be familiar with the eternal sacred tree of life in Norse mythology. Civilization of Mesoamerica believed in the cyber tree, that it was powerful. The Aztec and Mayan civilizations also considered this tree sacred. The Kalpa tree, often mentioned in Sanskrit literature, the Celtic tree of life is connected to the world of the spirits. Oak was considered the most sacred tree, but they thought every tree had magical properties. Trees were connected to the world of the spirits and their ancestors, and were doorways into other worlds. Celts believed that wise people, such as Druids, could communicate with the other world. The Celtic Druids were seen as intermediaries between gods and men, as teachers, judges and doctors. The Druids, who were priests in ancient Celtic religion, possessed the wisdom of the oak. This sacred knowledge had been handed down through the generations. Thousands of years ago, a godlike race known as the Tuatha De Danann came to Ireland. They brought with them 4 magical treasures that are mentioned in early Irish literature. These treasures include the Stone of Destiny, the Invincible Spear, the Shining Sword, and the Cauldron of Dagda. The Tuatha De Danann are said to have come to Ireland from the north of Europe. They are represented as large, strong and beautiful beings that mingled with mortals and yet remained superior to them. They were believed to be a race of gods or demigods with supernatural powers, human traits and personalities, and a large variety of skills in arts, crafts, music, language, love and war. There were also Druids among these people. In the Annals of the Four Masters, also known as the Annals of the Kingdom of Ireland, describe medieval Irish history and were compiled by monks. The story of the Tuatha De Danann, a mythical race of godlike beings with supernatural abilities, is told in these chronicles. They came to Ireland in the mist or cloud across the sea. Their principal residences were a district along the River Boyne near Leinster, one of the provinces situated in the east of Ireland, and the fairy mound of Femin in Tipperary, in the southwestern part of the country. Each member of the Tuatha De Danann has a special significance, skill or capacity, and these sources showed them to be immortal, Prominent members of the Tuatha include Dagda, a chief god associated with fertility, Morrigan, a goddess of war and fate, Nuada, the first king of the Tuatha De Danann. Angus was associated with beauty and love, Brigid, a fiery goddess of poetry, and finally Craden, a god of metalworking, who worked with brass and bronze and forged the weapons which the Tuatha De Danann used to battle the Fomorians. The Fomorians are also a supernatural race in Irish mythology. They are often portrayed as hostile and monstrous beings who come from the sea or underground. Later, they were portrayed as giants and sea raiders. They are enemies of Ireland's first settlers and opponents of the Tuatha De Danann. However, their relationship is complex and some of their members intermarry and have children. The Fomorians have thus been linked to the Jotnar of Norse mythology, so the Fomorians seem to be like the Anunnaki, have been gods who represent the harmful or destructive powers of nature, darkness and death, blight and drought, whereas the Tuatha De Danann, in contrast, seem to represent the gods of growth and civilization, like the Pleiadians. The Book of the Taking of Ireland is a collection of poems and prose narratives that purports to be the history of Ireland and the Irish from the creation of the world to the Middle Ages. There are a number of versions, the earliest of which was compiled by an anonymous writer in the 11th century. It tells of Ireland being settled or taken 6 times by 6 groups of people, the first being the people of Cessair, the second the people of Partalon, the third the people of Nemd, the fourth the Firbolg, the fifth the Tuatha De Danann, and finally the Milesians. The first 4 groups were wiped out or forced to abandon the island. The 5th group represent Ireland's pagan gods, while the final group represent the Irish people, the Gaels. It is said that during many years the Tuatha De Danann ruled Ireland in peace until the invasion of the Milesians, a tribe of people. The Book of Invasions says that the Milesians are the last mythical invaders of Ireland and are the true Gaelic people that arrived on Ireland's shores. The Tuatha De Danann tried to fight the invaders. They even created a magical storm in an attempt to drive them away. However, a Milesian poet calmed the sea with his invocation, and then his people landed. The Milesians are Gaels who set sail to Ireland from Hispania after spending hundreds of years travelling the earth. After their confrontation with the Tuatha De Danann, the 2 groups agree to divide Ireland between them. The Milesians take the world above, while the Tuatha De Danann take the world below, i.e. the other world. Also, the fairy people of Irish folklore are said to live beneath the hills and are often identified as the remnants of the ancient fabulous race of the Tuatha De Danann. So have any of you noticed that the Milesians sound exactly like the Scottish? So this is how the Scottish and Irish are related. They both came from Spain to conquer Ireland and Scotland. The Liber Gabala, which was written in the 11th century AD by Christian monks, purports to be the history of Ireland and the Irish. It tells us that all mankind is descended from Adam through the sons of Noah, and that a Scythian king named Phineas Farsaid, a descendant of Noah's son, is the forebearer of the Gaels. Phineas, a prince of Scythia, is described as one of the 72 chieftains who built the Tower of Babel. His son Nel wed Scota, daughter of an Egyptian pharaoh, and they have a son named Godelb Glass. Godelb crafts the Gaelic language from the original 72 languages that arose after the confusion of tongues. The Gaels leave Egypt at the same time as the Israelites and settle in Scythia. After some time, they leave Scythia and spend 440 years wandering the earth, undergoing a series of trials and tribulations akin to those of the Israelites, who spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness. Eventually, they reach Hispania by sea and conquer it. There, Godel's descendant, Briagan, founds a city called Brigantia, and builds a tower from the top of which his son glimpses Ireland. Brigantia refers to Corona in modern-day Galicia in Spain, and the tower is likely based on the Tower of Hercules, which was built at Corona by the Romans. Please like and share this video. If you can, go over to Patreon and help us out. Thank you very much.